Delighted tonight that we've got such a good representation across the UK hire boat scene, and there's a lot to cover, I'm sure, over the next 55 minutes or so, and we're going to try and cover a lot of ground, a lot of questions. Now, I'm going to start off in no particular order, but just I'm going to ask Sharon first of all. Sharon, tell us a little bit about Castle Narrowboats, where you're operating, and just give us a little bit of colour for about the organisation, about the company.
Okay, right. So we run Castle Narrowboats with my husband Nick and my son Joe, and we're situated on the beautiful Moorings Canal in South Wales. We took over the business around 14 years ago in 2004. We originally said we would only stay for about 10 years, but we're still here. We operate 8 boats, which range from 2 to 6 berths and can be hired for short breaks or longer. Uniquely, 2 of those narrowboats run on electric, and we have charging stations which are based along the canal, so people can charge up through their holiday.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I'll be coming back to ask you perhaps a bit more about the electric narrowboats a little bit later. So Karen, you're currently muted. If you unmute yourself and then tell us a little bit about Canal Cruising Company.
Okay, well, I'm Karen White from Canal Cruising Company in Stone. We're in roughly the middle of the Trent and Mersey Canal. I married into the White family in 1984, and I think I married into the company at the same time. I've never worked so hard for anything. And it was Peter's grandparents that started the company in 1948. We're now the oldest established family business operating on the canal system. We're the 3rd generation. Our children joined us about 3 years ago, our son and our daughter. They're the 4th, and then we've got the 5th generation, which are growing pretty quickly. We've got 2 sides to the business. We've got the hire side. We run 14 holiday boats, ranging from 2 to 8 berth. That keeps us busy at weekends. And then we've got the private side that keeps us busy during the week. We operate from a historic boatyard. I think it's probably the only one of that design in England. And we're situated right in the centre of the town, which is, really nice with the shops and everything. And we've got 3 working dry docks. And then we're also in the middle of a flight of locks, which makes it really easy for us to show people how to drive a boat and how to do the locks. And we've got my favourite canal by us, which is the Calden Canal. So yeah, that's me.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Carl, tell us a bit about the ABC Leisure Group's empire.
Okay, so ABC is nothing more than Alf Church Boat Centres, which is where the company started in the 70s. It's been privately owned by the same 3 owners since the mid-90s. When they started, there were 3 locations, which was Alf Church, Gayton and Anderton. And over the years, we've grown organically and through acquisition, I think most people probably realise. Initially, the company was just hire and boat building. We've diversified that into a wide range of activities now. Hiring accounts for about 40% of what we do. We've got just under 200 narrowboats for hire, ranging from 2 to 12 berths. I joined in 2006, initially as the finance director, part of a succession planning to take over from the MD, who was one of the owners. I think many people know Edward Helps. So he retired in 2017 when I assumed the reins.
Very good. Well, a good diverse range of experiences and locations and so on. So now looking forward to this. And it's great to see the questions are already coming in. So anybody else that's got some questions, then please please put them on the Q&A window. And I should have mentioned, we've got folks from all over the country. You mentioned the Calden Canal. We've got Alison Smedley, our own IWA Alison Smedley, right on the edge of the Calden Canal there. Folks from Truro, others from Stoke-on-Trent, Worcestershire, North Yorkshire, Alvechurch, Leicester. So really good representation across London, South London, Loughborough. Yeah, so really good representation. So let's get into a few of the key questions that I've got, and then we'll go to some of the questions that are coming in. It would be wrong of me just to kind of gloss over the fact that this has been a crazy year, and so I'm keen just to really focus in on that for a moment in terms of the impact of COVID. Generally, what's been the toughest aspect of dealing with the pandemic? Karen, I'll start with you.
Not the unknown, really. Having to purchase a fogging machine, sort the laundry out, sort the boats out, having to create distances. We usually do a run through on a boat to show people how things work. We've created little videos now and broke the actual handover down. And then we use a Kindle to do a quick run through. And then we use the British Marine handover sheet, which complements everything. We get people to tick what they understand and then sit at the back. And what they haven't grasped, we go through again. The lock side of it, it's automatic anyway, because we take them through the locks.
Yeah. So I guess there's a lot of that basic stuff that you've done. Sharon, what's your experience been? Because obviously being over the border, things have been a bit different as well.
Yes, we were a bit slower to come out of lockdown, and a bit slower in kind of saying that we were going to come out of lockdown as well. We didn't have much notice. So it was a bit of a mad scramble to get ready to open. But again, we've made videos for the inside of the boats because you can't go in there with customers. It's lots of extra precautions and things that we have to do that we never did before. So it's very different. And the staff have had to get used to working in a completely different way as well. Mm-hmm. But really, it is all about the uncertainty. I mean, now we're open, it's great. And it's great to be open and to be busy. But it is the uncertainty, we're just not knowing, because, I don't know, 5 miles up the road, they're going into lockdown again tomorrow. So it's quite worrying as well in a way.
And Carl, from your perspective, obviously running a wider set of operations, how difficult has it been to get consistency in making all of those changes across the group?
It's presented challenges, but we try and run every hire fleet in the same way, so everybody has the same standards, procedures, and training. I think for me, the biggest challenges have been the speed of change. So yes, it couldn't have come at a worse time, coming off the back of a winter when obviously we don't make any money, eroding the hire fleet season. We operate in Scotland and Wales as well as England, so we're contending with 3 different lots of regulations, which are all different, and rules are changing. So we had lots of 2 household bookings, which have now been cancelled and rebooked as groups of 6 in England, which will probably change tomorrow. So it's just, the whole season has just been a challenge to get through. And it's not, I don't think I've ever counted down to the end of a season before, but I'm looking forward to the end of October when we can just take a breather and sort of see where we are.
And has any of the government intervention been helpful? I'm thinking of furlough and the VAT referral and business rates and CBILS and things like that. How have you been able to avail yourselves of that, Carl?
For us, yes, it's been essential. So we benefited from the leisure grants, and we did furlough everybody apart from 4 of us. It's been interesting dealing with different regions. So the first grant that we had through was from Alf Church, and it came 3 days after government gave local government the funds. And the last one we didn't get through till June, which is our Aldermaston base, and we had to do battle with the local authority to prove that we qualified for it. Working with British Marine was a real benefit because they were able to get access into government to get marinas properly defined as qualifying for it. So without the furlough, without the grants, it would be a very different picture. I really do think that what the government have done has protected hundreds of jobs for us.
Well, I think it's certainly been an important area to work together. I'm delighted that across the Inland Waterways Association, together with Canal and River Trusts, the Broads Authority and British Marine, as you mentioned, we have made some pretty strong representation, both individually and I think very much more importantly together into government, because to some extent, understandably, their understanding of the waterway sector is relatively narrow, and it's up to us to help them understand how these things really operate in reality. And I still think we've some work to do there, particularly when it does come to things like the Retail Hospitality and Leisure Grant Fund. Actually, how are we going to make sure that certainly hire boat businesses are defined within that category? And I think that's certainly been one of those areas that's moved forward during this crisis. I'm just thinking, Sharon first, and then Karen. Looking back from where you are now to where you were in April, what are your thoughts? Have things turned the corner? Are things still, Sharon, to your point, still so uncertain? How do you view it going into this autumn and winter period?
Well, back in April, we didn't think we'd be open this year at all. That was our thinking. We really didn't think we'd be open. And yeah, it was thinking that we would have to go through, 3 winters really. So having no money from last October through to next March was a bit of a daunting prospect, really. So, yeah, the fact that we could open in July was fabulous, really. You couldn't have, and it's been a good season. What we've had of it has been a really good season, really busy. So it's made up for it a bit in a way, but. Yes, what's around the corner is quite worrying because we just don't know. We really just don't know. They're talking about potentially closing down the whole of South Wales, or locking down the whole of South Wales. So it's I don't know. It's hard to say really. Yeah, but it'll be disappointing if they do that before the end of the season. It'd be nice to get to the end of the season, really.
Yeah, let's hope we can.
Yeah.
So, Karen, what are your thoughts at this end of the season?
Yeah, my feelings are exactly the same. If we can get through the season to the end of October, it would be far, far better for everybody. For us as a trade, because we were worried in April that we may not be here in November, but the government has been really good with the grants that they've given. The loans the very cheap loans that we've got, but certainly it is worrying if he decides to do a 2-week shutdown at the end. I mean, I don't know about the other companies, but we've got a really good school holiday fully booked, and if we have to start moving bookings again, that was the really hardest bit, was to contact people. I'm sorry, you can't go, you've got to do X, Y and Z. Fortunately, we didn't have to refund as many as Carl, but it was less than 15,000, but it's a big chunk on a small company having to do that and go into another 2-week lockdown before the end of the season. It would be crippling again,
Yeah, well, particularly when you don't, I'm not trying to make light of it, but if you're locking down in April, May, June, at least you're at the start of the season, you've somewhere potentially to move people to. Whereas at this end, in reality, you're probably looking at starting to look at picking things up again, earliest maybe end of February, but more likely March or April next year.
Well, our stoppages don't come off until the middle of March anyway, so we
Yeah.
only start hiring then.
Carl, you mentioned that there's different groupings of people starting to hire. Are you seeing that could this mark the start of a completely new demographic and a completely new way of a completely new group of people that are starting to get onto the waterways?
I think it's got some good potential. I think for years we've been looking at introducing new groups to the waterways. I think I said earlier, I'm not sure I would have chosen the global pandemic to do it, but it can't be doubted that lots of people discovered the canals through lockdown walks. I think the restriction on overseas holidays has pushed them towards something a bit different, and we've seen a massive influx of new people. That's great, but it does slow down the whole operation. The booking process takes that bit longer because they've got more questions. The handover process takes longer because they've got no experience. I think it's fair to say boating is Marmite, and it's not for everybody. So I think there's a certain proportion that we've seen for the first and last time. There's a good proportion that have really enjoyed it and wish they'd done it years ago. And there's some families that are split down the middle. So I'm not sure who will see those again. But yeah, I do think it's introduced a lot of new people to the waterways, which is great.
Well, if the hire boat sector is successful, we're going to see potentially more people staying at home. The news of how great a hire boat holiday is going to hit home. Is there capacity in the network to cope with an upsurge in demand, or are we going to see gridlock across the inland waterway network? Like Sharon, I'll start with you. Like again, it's if suddenly there's a bit of an upsurge and we see more boat operators and so on the Mon and Breck, what's going to happen? You're in a unique position there.
Yeah, well, normally we roughly work on about 75% occupancy.
Yeah.
So for this period, we've been 100%. So there is a bit of capacity, not a lot, but there is a bit. The Mon and Breck really on this canal could potentially take another hire boat operator, I would have thought, but it's not for me. But yeah, it could potentially, because it's not an incredibly busy canal. It's still fairly quiet, and we don't have a lot of people living on boats here and that kind of thing. So I think it could accommodate a few more, but yeah.
And Karen, from your perspective, like obviously you're in a fairly busy part demographically, but you've got lots of routes that you could go from where you are, and at least a fair bit of variety. So yeah, we're going to see investment in new boat capacity. Is that going to put capacity on just the waterways themselves?
I don't know, because we've got Anglo-Wash further down. We've got Black Prince higher up, and we did have another base in Stone anyway. There were two bases in the same pound, Staffordshire Narrowboats. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I think certainly capacity-wise, August is usually pretty good. September and the rest of the months are probably 2/3 booked. So there's still capacity there if people want to come.
Good. Well, that's a good positive message to get out, because there's a question that's appeared in the Q&A window, and I encourage others to ask some more questions. But the question allied to that around sufficient moorings for hires, particularly with what's being widely reported as people trying to move out of London, putting big orders in for new boats, and I think we're probably going to see a lot of houseboats, liverboards coming through. So what's the pressure going to be like for moorings?
Well, in Stone, I mean, we have got a honeypot site anyway, and we've always got plenty of boaters moored down below the Star. We've got a little known mooring, which is just above us, which usually isn't full of boats. And then north of Stone, there's quite a gathering, or can be quite a gathering. But it's generally the bottom of Stone that's the one that's people struggle to moor in.
Yeah. Well, no, I've been very lucky. I can remember heading off from Wigram's Turn and heading towards Braunston, and I went around the turn there past the Braunston Marina. I'm thinking, right, I really can't go up towards the locks, and I managed to get a mooring between the two entrances of the Braunston Marina. But I really was, I was pushing my luck. But yeah, I tend to be lucky. I've done the same in London. But yeah, I guess there's going to be a bit of pressure. I'm going to go on to a few other questions. Thinking about the future of narrowboating. And actually, one of the things before I do that, I'm just going to launch a quick poll. I'm just launching this poll just to say, have you ever been on a hire boat holiday? And I'm also going to, the second question is, in your view, how does hire boat holiday prices compare to the cost of other boats? Because I want to look at this in terms of how's the hire boat world going to line up against other forms of holiday. Particularly going to come back to our panelists with a question about the cost of hiring a boat and whether that's a barrier. So I'm going to give another 20 seconds or so. There's about half of our audience has already voted. Please do select your answer. Have you ever been on a hire boat holiday? Yes or no? And second question, in your view, how do hire boat holiday prices compare to other costs of other types of holiday? So we've nearly got the whole of our audience tonight has voted. Still some coming in, so I'm just going to give you 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and ended the polling. And so I'm going to share those results. Okay, so there we go. Great to see that 92% have been on a hire boat holiday. Of the 8% that haven't, well, I hope we're going to persuade you to tonight, because maybe it's because you've got your own boat, but if you haven't had the chance to do that yet, I thoroughly recommend it. And question 2, well, there is that perhaps more widely than we would like view that hire boating is more expensive. Maybe our audience, only a third of the audience is saying that it's more expensive, 15% saying it's less expensive, and just over half saying the costs are pretty much the same. So I'm going to stop sharing the results now, and Carl, I want to go back to you on that question about, you do sometimes get people saying, oh, it's a bit expensive. What's your thoughts on that? Is that a fair comment?
I think my view is that self-catering holidays on narrowboats are fairly similarly priced to fixed property accommodation. In terms of a holiday, yes, I think it is quite expensive, but it's also very expensive to own and operate a narrowboat safely and to do all of the maintenance and things like that. Part of the reason for ABC diversifying across all of the other activities is because hire boating alone wasn't that profitable and perhaps wouldn't be able to sustain a company in isolation. So I think, yes, it's not a cheap holiday, that's for sure, but there are an awful lot of costs associated to putting out a hire boat, even if you just think about a commercial license. So it's not cheap, but I don't think it's that expensive. There's been some accusations that we've put prices up because of the lockdown. We haven't, because we published our prices in the brochure last September, so we don't have that ability like some other self-catering accommodation operators.
Karen, any comment around costs and competition?
Yeah, I would agree with Carl in that it isn't cheap to run a hire boat business, and the season that we have, so from March till the end of October, is very short. So we don't have much time really to actually hire them out. And when you're actually on a boat, if you think about the cost of hiring the boat, that's your accommodation and also your entertainment for the week. You don't actually, people come back and they say, we didn't spend any money while we were out this week. And because it's all there on the boat for you. So yeah, it is a bit more expensive, but it's good fun. So if you haven't tried it yet, just try it.
I agree. Karen?
Yeah, we tried years ago to, we looked at the holidays and we said, right, well, let's go on one of these budget holidays, see how much it actually costs us with the 4 of us, the 2 adults and 2 children. And we couldn't compete with the hire boats. We actually found the hire boat, because it was a self-contained unit, you've got everything you needed on board. All you got to pay for was your food, which you had to pay for when you were going on one of these cheap holidays abroad. And we found that the hire boat company, that the hire boat was far cheaper, because as Sharon said, the entertainment's already there. And what was really nice was the fact that we didn't put the television on all week. We didn't play electronic games. We took games with us, and we had a really great holiday, far more interesting than, wandering around shops or sitting on a beach or whatever. I mean, we're not into that anyway. We're more outdoorsy. So, walking and seeing places.
No, I think that's a really interesting point. I think the way I justify it to myself, because I do want to get good value for money, is that when I hire a boat, it's an absolutely unique experience. I can stay in a country cottage, but it's generally the same sort of experience. I might get to a new part of the country, but where else do you get let loose driving 70-foot narrowboats just like that? It's so good. Now, Karen, your comments bring me to another question I want to ask that's kind of related to all of this in terms of what you're competing with. I think we're seeing Wi-Fi and fridges and central heating and USB charging and dishwashers, for goodness sake, on some boats. I think it's great, but is that where we're going? What else are we going to see in glamming up narrowboating? Should we be going back to basics and trying to go back to earlier days?
Well, the one thing that Rendell, which is Peter's grandfather, always said, he says, keep it simple. Good, but simple. He says you can't go wrong. That's the ethos that we actually stand by. And a few years ago, Wi-Fi was a big issue, asking, can we take Wi-Fi? Have you got Wi-Fi on board? And on all this catering, I actually run the company when we go on holiday on the boats from this iPad, my telephone, and on 4G. So apart from downloading films and things, which, we take the DVD player with us, I don't see why we have to go down the technological route. I think keep it simple, like Randall always said. I mean, you don't need a dishwasher. It's much quicker to do it up in the bowl. We have put a microwave on one of the boats. Yeah. And I think that's probably the only extra technical thing that we've got, but everything else is just, basically simple. You still charge your phones up on the 240 because we've got 240 inverters. That's great. That's what we do.
Carl, any thoughts for all the perks across?
Yeah, we take a slightly different approach in that we've got microwaves, Wi-Fi, entertainment centres. And really, we're looking at family holidays, and I've got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old myself, and to drag them on a boat without Wi-Fi would be very difficult. The fact of the matter is, it's still the telephone network, so you don't get coverage everywhere. So you do release them from their obsession every now and then. But I think we're competing with fixed property holidays with holidays that are going abroad, and I think people expect to have a lot of the comforts that they have at home. I draw the line at anything electrical that supports life. because we can't guarantee that, because we do have people wanting to bring things like that. But yeah, I think our approach, and that's not to say Karen's is wrong, our approach is to embrace the technology. Although when we were looking at Wi-Fi, somebody suggested that the best thing to do would be to promote getting away from it. So I think there's room in the market for everybody.
Yeah, agree. Sharon?
Yeah, well, we have microwaves on board, although quite often customers do ask for them to be taken off because they don't want them on there. But not Wi-Fi. The signal here is not very good. You're lucky if you get a phone signal, so.
So Sharon, you have embraced some change. Obviously, you mentioned the electric boats that you've got. So we've got a question in from one of the from our audience. Are the panel investigating the use of electric powered boats in the future? What are the timescales on it? What do they see as the main challenges to moving towards electric powered boats? So Sharon, I'll start with you because you've got some experience of this, and then I'll go on to Karen and Carl.
Okay, so we run 2 electric hire boats at the minute. We actually were very lucky because when we bought the business, everything was already in place and they were already hiring electric boats. So we just took over everything. There are 6 charging points along the canal. So the boats will go 18 miles on a single charge, and then they just charge up either overnight, charge up whenever really, stop for lunch and plug in or whatever. And we were looking prior to COVID-19, we were talking to a boat builder about building us another electric boat. So it's definitely something that we want to increase. We want to have more electric boats. We do have we're supposed to have room at each charging point for 4 boats. So we're supposed to have 200 foot at each charging box. But we do have some issues with Canal River Trust about that because they keep building things on the area that's supposed to be designated for our charging. So we've got water points on there now, we've got a pump out station. So we do have some issues around that, but yeah, we do definitely want to increase them in the future.
Great. Karen, what are your thoughts on electrics?
I think it's great, but we need the infrastructure first before I start to invest into an electric boat. That with, you know, as Carl said, he's gone more electrical, technical. And if people do get the idea that they can bring all sorts of electrical equipment with them, how does the boat stand up to that without having the infrastructure in the first place? Because we have enough trouble with boats running out of things or filling toilets, or, you know, and they're in the middle of nowhere and you have to try and sort things out. So until we haven't got enough pump out places on the canal system, certainly not on the Cheshire Ring, and that's one biggie. So until the actual somebody's got plug-in bits, you know, I think it's a no-no at the moment on the main system. On your system, because your canal's shorter, but on our system, until that's there, I don't think you'll get many electric boats going around the system.
So thinking of that and the electric charging points and the other services that are needed, where do you, like, in your relationship with the navigation authorities and others, who's got the responsibility for putting this infrastructure in place? A lot of the focus on the canals is about restoration and bringing historic canals back into use. How do we move the current network into something that's fit for the future? Karen, picking up with you first, and then I'll go to Carl on that question.
CRT haven't got the money to do it, and that's basic. You know, they're trying to keep up with the canal breaking down as it is without starting to have to put new innovative items on the canal system. So unless it's going to come from the trade, and the trade are going to put their hand in the pocket and start putting the new systems in for the future, for future boats, to try and keep up with technology, CRT aren't going to do it now.
Yeah, Carl, briefly on that one. I'm conscious we've 20 minutes left. The time has flown, and we've got a lot of questions. But Carl, take that one on from your side.
I agree with everything Karen's just said about the infrastructure. The Moorings is lucky to have those charging points. I've got a broader problem in that most marinas are located in rural locations, and there actually isn't the physical electricity supply into the marinas to be able to sustain the infrastructure. So I'm not sure it's CRT. I think it's a broader network problem. I actually think that technology will move on beyond electronic boats. I think it will probably be something like hydrogen cells or something like that will be the ultimate solution.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. Right, I'm going to tackle some of I've got a whole lot more questions here that have been coming in, but there's some coming in on the Q&A, so I'm going to just deal with some of these. There was an RYA water sports survey done a couple of years ago, and they saw that in terms of, it was looking at all types of leisure activities on or near water, and what they saw was the biggest increase in volume was in canal boating in 2018. 100,000 more people compared to the previous year, so that was up to 450,000 people. What do you think might have been the reason for such an increase? The survey didn't ask why that increase happened, and you've maybe got your own answer to that. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I was asked in this question, could it have been all those canal programs that we're seeing on TV? And thank you, Maria, for that question. Sharon, what are your thoughts about why did we see that surge?
Well,
did you see it?
Yes, we did, definitely. But we also had Tim and Prue on one of our boats not long before that. So we definitely saw an upsurge when it was on the TV, and there have been lots of programs on. So yes, it is a good reason. And a lot of people that come on the boat say, oh, we saw Tim, Prue, we saw this, we saw that. And I think, yeah, it is, and there's one on there, Cruising the Cut, and we had someone quoting it the other day. I've been watching all episodes of Cruising the Cut, so people are really getting into it that have never been boating before. There are lots of newcomers to the canal that are watching these programs, and it's really inspiring them to just have a go. I do think, though, that some of these programs need to maybe aim at a slightly different audience, but that's, yeah, that may be a different conversation.
And what are your thoughts on the audience that is being aimed at?
Yeah, there is quite a few canal boat programs at the moment, offering various aspects of the canal system. But I do think it needs to be a slightly younger market or to aim for, because it's a different holiday. And even myself, when I go out, I think, I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do this, So you've got to be very fit to do.
Yeah. And Carl, what are your thoughts?
I agree. Myself and our marketing director, Haley, are that sad that when they go out, we sit and we're messaging each other backwards and forwards going, look at the spike of the people on the website. So when the programs go out, we get hundreds and hundreds of more visitors to the websites during and immediately afterwards. So yeah. I think that's definitely out. I think the diversity of the people that go out on the boats could do with being addressed.
Yeah, and do they come on board expecting to use that such inappropriate word, barge around, and are bashing into things left, right, and centre? Is that a bit of a pain for you to deal with?
I don't think they come with unreasonable expectations, but I think people can be caught out by wind and conditions and things like that. So it does happen, but they are all insured, and we do try and deal with any instances they arrive as fairly as we can with the boat owners.
So we've got a couple of questions and a couple of comments around the possibility of hire boat companies offering one-way hires. And we're starting to see, and it's a bit costly for car hire firms offering one-way hire, a bit of a premium on it. But actually, with today's technology, being able to get reverse bookings and maybe even incentivize those, I haven't seen that. I haven't been inquiring about it, so I haven't seen that on the waterways. Is it offered? Is it likely to be offered? Karen, start with you. I'm not sure how applicable Sharon's going to be in your area, but Karen, start with you, and then I'll hit Carl with that one.
Well, it is actually done already by, or had been done already by other companies, but because we've only got one base, it makes life difficult when you're doing a turnaround. So it isn't something that we would actually offer.
Yeah, and I'm thinking on that sort of comment, because one of the things I was thinking about in preparing for tonight was whether there could be more collaboration between different hire boat companies, or is it a bit cutthroat out there? If you were to, could you offer that?
No, I wouldn't, because you've also got the training side of it as well, and you've also got, it's okay setting off in one place, how are you going to get the people back from there? Who's going to pick them up? So there's a lot more added cost to it than just saying, oh yes, I'll do a one-way trip. You know, when I go on holiday, we've got some friends who pick the boat up after us, and we have their car or they have my car. It's easy done that way. But I can't see customers allowing other people to drive their cars, or I'm not going to put a minibus on to fetch 10 people from there and take those people. Because then you've got the added cost as well as cleaning the boat and getting the boat prepped for the next people.
Carl, you have a few bases. I don't know whether they're a one-way from one base to another. Possible?
No. Alfchurch as a company have done it in the past. One of the joys of a narrowboat holiday is you may set off with your idea of a route that you're going to take, but you may decide to go at a slower pace. You may decide to take a different turn. You can change your mind en route. And when we used to do it, very rarely did the boat end up where the boat was supposed to end up. And then you have all the problems of things being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We do, however, build all of our boats at Alfchurch, and we do offer those on one-way hires from Alfchurch to the destination, assuming it can get there by water. Obviously, on the Moorings we can't. They are very popular, but they just go out on the mailing list as and when boats are completed.
Yeah, thank you. So conscious of about 15 minutes left, and the questions are coming thick and fast. And even though I'm sure we're not going to get to all of these questions, I'm still going to encourage others to ask questions, because we'll take those questions down and we'll find some way of getting answers back to you. There's one of our audience has said that he's done one-way trips since 1985. Well, that's encouraging, but maybe it doesn't look like it's the way forward necessarily. Just a quick question on propulsion. What's the effect likely to be in terms of the abolition of red diesel on the industry? What are your thoughts on that? Certainly something that IWA is getting involved with in campaigning.
I mean, the current situation is that end user boats that have got traces of red diesel in will be exempt from any sort of prosecution. At the moment, that doesn't extend to suppliers of red diesel, so it looks like we may have to replace an awful lot of tanks and offer white diesel. In terms of boaters, I don't think there'll be that much impact, because they are still going to allow the duty to be claimed at the lower rate for domestic use. It just reverses the way it's administered. So I think it's going to be a burden for the operator, but for the boater, I don't think it'll have too much impact.
Karen?
Well, I encourage it, really. I mean, the sooner we go to white diesel, the better. It's just, you know, the financial side of it, because the engines run cleaner, the eberspatchers and the heating units, the eberspatchers were faster, they run cleaner and better on it.
Yeah. Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen, so we just have to deal with it, really, and make the best of it. But yeah, it's going to be cleaner, so that's good. It's good news.
So a question here, why does some boat owners regard hire boaters like us as a nuisance and a, frankly, lower life form? Because you get some abuse. this question is said probably voted for more over more of the system than many boat owners, including the tidal Thames and the Trent, and are very experienced and being IWA members. So like I've hired all over. I've done the tidal Thames. I've been cautious. There've been a few times where maybe I haven't been as diligent as I should do. I can remember on that tidal Thames run, heading from Willow Tree, racing down through, not really racing, I was being fairly sensible on my speed, but we ended up at the end of the season in Camden, late one night, trying to find a mooring, quite difficult, probably moored in the wrong place, probably it was due every bit of criticism I got. And we left early the next morning down the 3 Camden locks. Actually, I think we might have forgot to close the lower paddles because we were racing for the tide at Limehouse to get back up the Thames. Now, some of that might be just lack of experience. Some of it might be just pushing the boundaries a bit. How do you balance this view of like, how do we get boat owners to just maybe mentor the hire boaters with a little bit more respect? Is that ever going to happen, or is it just always going to be that niggle? Karen?
I think you're always going to have that niggle because private boaters always assume that a hire boater doesn't know what he's doing, and yet we've got people that have been coming to our base for over 30 years. They've got more experience than most private boaters, even the new ones. You know, we spend an awful lot of time with them, going through locks, showing them how to drive, and if we're unsure, we'll actually take them further down the canal just to make sure, because all said and done, we're trying to safeguard our own business and the boat, because it's not Tupney Halfpenny boat, you know, you're talking thousands of boats are. So, you know, we spend a lot of time with them and try and get them so we're happy and confident that they're not going to do anything, but these things happen. But I think the biggest thing is the fact that every private boater assumes that a hire boat is a novice, and that's where it comes from. Yeah, we get the same when we're out.
Carl, any thoughts about, and it comes into the safety side of the question that I haven't had a chance to ask yet. Any thoughts around that and the experience of hire boaters?
I think in terms of the safety, I would welcome anybody to come and look at the handover process that we do. I'm confident that our people only let people go out when they deem they're safe. I think the bigger issue is you've got a number of different communities all using the waterways for different reasons. So whether it's fishermen, stand-up paddle boarders, people that live on boats, hirers, and because they all want something slightly different out of it, there are flashpoints and clashes. A lot of private boaters started off as hirers. And it's interesting on a lot of the Facebook groups, when somebody goes past too fast, it's assumed that it's a hire boater. Yeah. But then often there's a lot of comments saying, no, the hire boaters are actually better than the private boaters. So I think it's going to be difficult to get away with. The way we try and deal with it is by fostering relationships with the people that are on the routes that we're around and being fair with them if something does happen, but it could be just as easily be a private boater on a private boater. I don't think it will go away, but I think we can all learn to live together. And
Sharon, do you have any of that, or the local boat owners, a more respectable group on the Moorings?
Well, most of the private boaters on the Moorings are lovely and very helpful to the hire boaters. I must admit, there are a few, but most of them are lovely. But although we spend a long time with people, you know, with new people to hire boating, before we kind of leave them to go on their way, but they're not going to be perfect because they are new, and it just needs a bit of, you know, give and take really. And I think that hire boaters in a way have more training than a private boater would. You can actually buy a boat and you don't need any training. You can just go off on it. Whereas a hire boater has to go through training, even if they've been before. And we get lots of people on the Moorings who have got their own boats because they can't bring it onto this canal. Yeah. And they've got their own boats and they still have to have training. So I think, yeah, it will always be there, I think, but it's, yeah, it's just something we have to live with, I suppose.
Yeah, certainly. I've found that when I go around so many different canals and you're seeing all of the different types and styles of users, then you do build incredible experience. And I would certainly like to think I'm, whilst in every situation I've been involved in, I've been well trained and so on. I certainly feel that I've built a lot of experience over the years. I'm also fortunate that I live quite close to the Oxfordshire Narrowboats base on the South Oxford, and I take great pleasure in walking up to Hayford, Allen's Lock at Upper Hayford, watching them train the higher boaters, and then I take a walk on to the next lock and just try and see how much they've actually retained by the time they get to that next lock, and take great pleasure in just pointing out a few things if they perhaps need a little bit of extra training. But by and large, you just can't fault the training that's been given. You're dealing with a very variable group of people as well, and that's the other challenge I know that you have, and you have to take it very, very diligently. Couple of last questions. Fortunate to have a very international audience, Canadian in the audience, meeting friends from Australia to hire a boat. They postponed from this September until next September, but still not sure whether they'll be able to get over here next year. Going back to kind of where we were before, how's that type of experience contributing to your overall sense of business uncertainty? We don't know what Boris is going to say tomorrow morning when he addresses the country. What contingencies can you make? Are you just are there things that you could be doing to make sure that your businesses will be alive and thriving this time next year to be able to give these guys a really positive answer? Karen.
Your guess is as good as ours. I mean, we're doing our best. We've invested in quite a bit of equipment to help us get through this problem we've got this year. It's not going to go away. It's still going to be with us next year. It's just how we approach it. And I mean, if we have another lockdown next year, that will kill everybody. That will kill the whole country, I think. Because he's not going to have enough funds to be able to do another furlough, is he? No. So I think all we can do is just hope that they get the vaccine and we're still here next year.
Yeah.
I think that's all we can do.
Let's hope so. Carl, your thoughts?
Yeah, at the beginning of the lockdown, we could see that overseas travel, both in and out, was going to be very difficult. So we committed to refund anybody that didn't want to defer. In terms of making business planning difficult, yes, it does, but so does the rule of six from 2 households, from not being able to operate. I think the one thing this year has taught us is how flexible and resilient we are as an industry. It's good how through various means, IWA, British Marine, people have all come together and we've adopted an industry approach to deal with it. For the people coming from Australia and Canada, we'll be here. Whether you can come next year, whether it needs to be the year after, it will be what it will be. But rest assured, we'll, as an industry, we'll do the best we can to accommodate you when we can. I think probably about a third to a quarter of our guests are normally overseas. We've not seen any of them this year, which is a terrible shame. But we'll be looking forward to when they do get back, whenever that may be.
And Sharon, your thoughts?
Yes, well, we normally do have quite a lot of overseas visitors. We're holding quite a few over till next year or the year after. Hopefully they can, come at some time. But yeah, I just want to get through this season really, and get through to the end of October, and hopefully next March something might have changed, hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, like Karen says, we've invested in loads of equipment that we need to use this year, and if we have to use it next year, then so be it. And hopefully lots more, British people will we'll find the canals as well then.
Are you seeing a good age spread? And so, like, have you completely lost the older age demographic in hiring this year, or have they held up well in terms of the overall spread of age ranges that you've had, Sharon?
We've had a really good mix, actually, really good mix, and quite a lot of, obviously we just got through the summer holidays, so we would have, but a lot of families. And I think something that someone said to me, they said lockdown had kind of taught them the importance of family and being together. I think an Narrowboat holiday is an ideal time to just come together and, you know, work through the locks and things like that. But yeah, we've seen a big mix of people and quite a lot of younger couples and that kind of thing. Obviously not the groups of friends that we would normally see, but yeah, it's been good mix.
And Karen, have you got similarly positive experiences this year as we look to wrap things up in the next minute or so?
Yeah, we have. We've had a good mix. We've had obviously our normal regulars, but we've had some really nice newbies, couples, families. The older clients still come. We've just had to cancel one for today that they were 84, but they were coming by public transport from Devon. So, but they're hopefully coming next year. But most people, if they come in their own car, they're in their own bubble. The boat is created its own bubble because they're allowed, they get on and nobody else goes in the boat but them. They go off on the holiday, they're sanitizing, they're doing whatever, keeping the distance, because the nature of the boat itself is its own bubble. So yeah, and we've had a lot of people all through the age group.
Great. And Carl, last thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think that similar sort of story. Up until this year, we had seen an ageing customer base. I think we spent quite a lot of money marketing and promoting it to younger people. The mix of customers this year has been fantastic. An awful lot of new people that have discovered the canals for the first time. So hopefully that will continue in the future.
Great. Well, a really positive message. There's several questions we haven't got to. I know there's a question that's just come through quite late around autumn and winter breaks over Christmas and so on. But Karen, to your point earlier, the stoppages on the network really make that sort of thing really difficult. I'm really sorry to anyone whose question we didn't get to tonight, but this has been a terrific hour where we've explored a lot of different topics. I would really like to thank Sharon, Karen, and Carl for spending this evening with us and for covering all those questions. I'd like to commend and congratulate you guys in terms of what you've done and how you've turned things around over the last 6 or 7 months. And I wish you well and the rest of the hire boat industry the very best for the rest of this season and into 2021, and until we can get on top of what is a very, very unusual situation. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. Thank you for everybody who has put questions through. To our panelists, Sharon, Karen, Carl, thank you again. Really appreciate you joining us. And good night, everyone.